Alyssa, Mark, and Stephanie, as well as myself. So we do have a quorum and we can start. I'm hoping Jim Langan will join us and Dawn Philibert as well. But it's my preference, unless another board member feels differently, it's my preference to start now.
This conference will now be recorded.
And I would again ask people who joined the meeting to please mute yourself until it's your time to speak. Okay, so not hearing any objection to starting the meeting and the fact that the recording has been started, I'm going to get things going. So welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board meeting for tonight, Tuesday, March 16th. With me as members of the board, we have Alyssa Eyring, we have Mark Baer, Stephanie Wyman, and I do not see in the list of attendees, oh, Dawn Philibert just arrived. I don't see Jim Langan yet. But now there are 5 of us, so we have more than a quorum. There's Jim, so there's 6 of us. Okay, so in attendance as staff for the City of South Burlington Planning and Zoning Department, we have Marla Keene, our Development Review Planner, and Delilah Hall, our Zoning Administrator. The first item on the agenda is any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items. Do we have anything on that? Hearing none, the second agenda item is announcements. Do we have any board announcements? Again, hearing none, we'll move to, well, in a minute, we'll move to comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda. I do need to read some instructions, especially for people who have not participated in one of these virtual meetings before. Thank you to those in attendance, those on the phone, and those watching online. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Anyone who wishes to participate in the hearing should sign the virtual sign-in sheet in the chat box. Anyone on the phone that would like to sign in can send an email to Marla Keene. Her email address is mkeene, Keene, @sburl.com, and provide your contact information in that email. This is necessary in order to be considered a participant should you want to obtain party status in order to appeal a decision made by this board. You can also submit comments in writing, and that can be during the hearing or between hearings. I would ask that you mute your phone or computer so we don't catch ambient noises in the background. Looks like everybody's done that. Thank you. And so now I'm going to ask for comments and questions from the public not related to items on the agenda. We don't seem to have any, which we almost never do. So at this point, I think we can move on to the substantive items on the agenda, the first of which is continued site plan application SP 21007 and conditional use application CU 2101 of Rice Memorial High School to amend a previously approved site plan for a 126,875 square foot educational facility. The amendment consists of a 160 square feet building expansion to house a new cooler freezer located at 99 Proctor Avenue. Who is here for the applicant tonight?
I am Jason Barron.
Welcome, Jason. Will anyone else be with you?
Our principal, Lisa Lorenz, was supposed to be on the call. but I don't see her and I haven't heard from her, so I'm more than capable of moving forward.
Okay, good. So this is the continuation of an earlier hearing. Were you sworn in at that hearing, Jason?
No, I was not.
Okay, so we'll do that now. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you. Let me just, this is my first time reading through these prompts. Land development projects that do not require subdivision or do not qualify as a planned unit development, which this doesn't, are eligible to be reviewed as site plans. In this hearing, the applicant will describe the project and the applicant and board will step through staff comments, but I'm going to just kind of shortcut that now because we have had an initial hearing on this application, and it seems like, Marla, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like we're to the point where we have a draft decision and don't really have any staff comments to go through. Is that correct?
Mostly correct. This hearing was continued without being heard because we felt the issues could be resolved without the board's feedback. So this is the first time the board's seeing it, but staff considers that there's no outstanding issues.
Okay, well, I don't feel bad about not remembering this hearing. So if staff considers there aren't any outstanding issues, I would ask my fellow board members if any of them see any issues that would prevent us from closing the hearing.
I have none.
Okay.
I don't see anything, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Mark and Dawn, and other people are shaking their heads. So I'm assuming we don't have any such issues. I would then ask members of the public if they would like to comment on this application. Do we have any public comments? Okay, no public comments. It just reminded me I forgot something earlier. Before we start a hearing on a matter, we do disclosures. Disclosures are generally whether people on the board feel as if they might have a conflict of interest or some other transaction has occurred that might make them less than impartial. For me, and not every member is going to have a disclosure in the item, obviously. For me, many years ago, I represented Verizon Wireless in a matter that was adverse to the Catholic Diocese of Burlington, but it had nothing to do with this property, nothing to do with Rice High School. So I don't think that's a problem. I also represented in that time frame one of the engineering or architectural firms that has done work on this project, Black River Design. It appears, though, that the work they did was revised in 2014. So that's been quite a while ago. So all that's to say, I don't think I have any reason to recuse myself. Do any other board members have disclosures?
Brian, I'll just say I don't feel I have any kind of conflict of interest. That my son did graduate from Rice last year, but it was successful. So he graduated successfully. So I don't think I can look at this impartially.
If they hadn't let him graduate, then there would have been a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we don't have any board recusals. We don't have any board comments. We don't have any public comments. Does the applicant want to say anything? Have you, Josh, reviewed the draft decision? Jason, I'm sorry. Have you, Jason, reviewed the draft decision?
I reviewed it, and it's my first time looking at one of these, but I kind of got the impression that you guys didn't have any issues except for the condition of the C1 drawing for the next time we do a site plan amendment. Besides that, I think I'm pretty clear.
Yeah, and that was the thing that I had highlighted, just to make clear that we'll let this one go as is, but the next time you come before us, we're going to need to have those drawings updated. Is that correct, Marla? Is that the convey?
Yep, that's correct. And I anticipate that fairly soon the LDRs will be amended to require that anyway.
Okay. So all of that being said, I think I would entertain a motion to close this hearing.
Brian, I'll make a motion that we close site plan SB 21007 and conditional use application CU 2101 of Rice Memorial High School.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. So it's been moved by Mark, seconded by Dawn. I'm going to do a roll call just because it's easier to do, I think, that way on this virtual platform. So Jim Langen, how do you vote? Jim? Okay. Mark Bear,
Aye.
Dawn Philibert,
Aye.
Stephanie Wyman,
Aye.
Melissa Eyring,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So I've closed the hearing and thank you for your time, Jason.
Thank you. And Brian, I just did get a text message from our principal, Lisa Lorenz. She is on the call. She's been muted. She just wanted to let everybody know that she is here.
Okay, did she have any comments?
No, she was, I don't think so. I can check real quick. Nope, she just texted me. She has no comments.
Okay, so we're closed. We're going to move on to the next item. Thank you again, Jason.
Brian, I think I was right. This is Jim. I was muted. I was voted aye as well.
Okay, so the record will reflect that the vote was 6-0 in favor of closing the hearing. Now, the next item on the agenda is a sketch plan application number SD 2108 of DS Realty LLC to create a planned unit development on an existing parcel currently developed with 3 buildings, consisting of an artist production studio and standard restaurant in 1 building and 3 dwelling units in 2 buildings. The planned unit development consists of removing all 3 dwelling units by demolishing 1 residential building and converting the other to an educational facility with associated minor improvements, and adding educational facility as an allowed use at 916 Shelburne Road. I'm going to start with the disclosures on this one. I have to recuse myself from this hearing. I assume that Dawn will be chairing. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I am going to mute myself. I will not take part, but I will watch just so I'm ready for the hearing after this.
Thank you, Brian. We'll see you in a bit. So my name is Dawn Philibert. I'm the clerk of the DRB. And let's jump into agenda number 5 as Brian laid it out. Let me just spend a minute talking about what this presentation is. We are at the level of sketch plan. And for those of you who don't know what this process is all about, this is not a formal hearing. This is an opportunity for the applicant to tell us all about the project, what they have in mind, give us a little history, a brief high-level overview, and then we can walk through the comments that staff has, and it will give the applicant a sense of what the board is thinking in terms of how the application conforms to the LDRs and what issues there might be and what more information the board might be interested in at the next time we review this application, which will be preliminary plat. Is that correct, Marla?
Yep, that's correct.
Which will be a formal hearing and we'll swear people in and whatever. So who is here for the applicant?
So I'm Teresa Davis, the owner, and then we have a team of people who are also here.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. I don't need to swear you in, but I do need to ask if anyone else on the board has needs to recuse himself or has a conflict that they would like to disclose. Hearing none.
Can I ask that the rest of Teresa's team get introduced just so I can take accurate notes?
Sure, I mean, I can introduce people or they can introduce themselves, but we have Paul Simon of VIS Construction Consultants, and he's the landscape architect. We have Catherine Lang from Freeman, French and Freeman. And we have Paul Boisvert with Engineering Ventures as our civil engineer. And then we also have Robert Davis, who is my husband and co-property owner.
Thanks,
Thank
Teresa.
you. That's helpful. Okay. Would you please, Teresa, give us an overview of your project, what you have in mind?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to address everybody. I'll just give a real quick overview of my business and also how the property is used. So Davis Studio has been in business for a little over 17 years. We were on Pine Street in Burlington for the first 12 years, and then we moved to this property in South Burlington about 5 years ago. We're predominantly known in the community for our youth art camps and classes, and we also have several adult art programs. And more recently, our educational division has been growing, and that includes an arts-based preschool and a small private elementary school. So we're fairly well known and well loved in the community, and all of these programs have been thriving and growing even in the midst of COVID, which has been great. We also have great relationships with the neighbors on Lindenwood, and many of the children that live on Lindenwood attend our classes, and our preschoolers in particular know almost all the neighbors by name and leave them little love notes on their porch. So, it's that kind of a pretty friendly atmosphere in the neighborhood. The biggest change that we've had recently due to COVID was that we had a small 25-seat cafe, which was a full service restaurant on site, and that was called the Starving Artist Cafe, which we have now closed permanently. We have, however, retained the commercial kitchen and are now renting it to Pie Society. And Pie Society likely falls into the category of more of restaurant short order or possibly even a food hub. They bake sweet and savory pies and have more of a CSA style direct to customer model with a weekly pickup. And so there's no on-site dining anymore at all. They were just featured in Stuck in Vermont. So I think that was just like 2 weeks ago or something. The campus itself is really ideal for Davis Studio in many ways. The location is convenient. The big grassy lawn and the proximity to Farrell Park and the wooded walking trails all support our other programming. When we purchased the property, we also inherited the 3 rental units. So the rental units are obviously not part of our arts education mission. In fact, even though we've carefully vetted all the potential tenants, the presence makes some families with children a little bit nervous or uncomfortable. As our programs have grown, we're in need of additional classroom space for which the carriage house structure is ideal. About a year ago, a large pine tree crashed through the small A-frame building, doing some pretty significant damage, and Robert's going to address that issue later more specifically. We explored the idea of putting up additional apartments on the property that were more aligned with our mission by maybe creating artist lofts for individuals who could integrate in our community by being artists in residence. But in the end, we just weren't able to come up with a plan that was feasible, affordable, or mission aligned. We've been working with Paul Simon to develop a long-term site plan. And during this phase 1, we want to remodel the carriage house and add classroom space. And that's what we're here to address this evening. And at a future point in time, we hope to address some parking needs along with additional landscaping and playground design. So that's just kind of an overview of the business and the project.
Thank you. Anything else your team would like to add before we start to walk through staff comments?
No, I think we're prepared to respond as you address the comments, I think.
Okay, so let's dive right in and start doing those. Okay. As you know, the staff comments are in red, and the first comment is on page 4. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to demonstrate why they believe the project qualifies as a PUD, given the language of the PUD purpose statement, by demonstrating how the property functions as a unified, coherent entity, and how the PUD is respecting and supporting the adjacent neighborhood as opposed to infringing upon it.
Okay, I will respond to that. So the expansion of the existing educational facility use to the carriage house would actually really provide greater unification to make a more coherent entity with just the basic functions and the main operations of Davis Studio. And for the second question, this project will respect and support the adjacent neighborhood by operating as it already is. There will be little to no perceived changes from a neighbor's perspective. The only thing we can even think of that might change is there'll probably be slightly less late night activity on site, because instead of renters coming and going, it'll be quiet because our classes will have ended. So that was really the only change that we think will even happen.
Okay, thank you. Board members, does anyone have any questions about this? Okay, moving on to the second comment. Since the applicant originally was requesting the regulations of the C1 R15 apply in the R4, staff recommends the board confirm with the applicant that they are only seeking permission to allow educational facility in the R4, and they would be satisfied if the other provisions of the R4 district continue to apply.
So this is Paul Simon. I'll respond to that one there. I think we will be agreeing with staff that educational facility use for the carriage house can fall under conditional use review instead of split lot extension, providing that we can still have the parking there. I think this is stuff we still have to work out with staff. I noticed, like on page 235 of the regulations regarding offsite parking, that there's a statement about offsite parking and loading space for any non-residential use, can't be allowed, I guess, in the R4, but I'm thinking that may have to do with offsite parking that's off the site. But offsite parking is sometimes defined as off the street. So we have questions like that. We just want to check and make sure that everything that we're proposing to do here for an extension of into the R4 would be allowed. Another one that comes to mind too is the fact that there's a variety of uses that Teresa mentioned that they do here, and teaching the arts is what they do mainly. But there is a preschool education aspect to that. Now, under commercial 1 R15, if we were able to do split lot zone extension, childcare facilities allowed, but the regulations do not allow childcare facility in R4. However, educational facility, which we believe meets the broad term of what is allowed for what Davis Studio does, falls correctly into allowing the preschool use. So that's a question I guess we have for the board on that front is that. Plus, we also understood through the initial staff review that the GIS line, it's a split lot. So most of the site is 1.32 acres of it is in the commercial zone district. A back sliver of it is in the R4 district. So there is a split lot zone extension that we could do, which requires a PUD review to ask for 50 feet to go back towards the east, and then fall under have the carriage house fall under the commercial zoning allowance, which is what we could pursue instead of asking conditional use, I guess, in the R4. So we have either option
Okay.
to
Can
pursue.
you've laid out three things. can we go through them one at a time? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay, so the first one, R4 does prohibit off-site commercial parking. It would not be considered off-site commercial parking if it were parking associated with the educational use. So that's not an issue. If you were to, if you were to propose like all kinds of additional parking in that area, more than would support the use in the R4 portion of the lot, we'd probably have to look at it more closely. But if you're, as you have proposed today, I don't see that being a problem.
Could I ask a question, Marla? When we had, as we've thought about this going forward, we'd really, at one point you had suggested that where the playground is now, which is back on that southeast corner, would be an ideal place to add parking. We do need to add parking at some point. And we agree with you that that is actually an ideal space to add it. And we plan at some time in the future to do that. So we just want to make sure that that wouldn't be prohibited in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so that kind of gets to Paul's second point. And I think that this maybe wasn't clear in the staff comments, because the point that the staff comments were trying to make is that your request to allow the C1R15 zoning into 50 feet into the R4 doesn't get you there, because the line that you've shown on your plan is inaccurate. The portion of the lot that's in the R4 is up to 65 feet wide. So if you're only allowed to extend it 50 feet, so you would still have 15 feet left over that's in the R4. So getting back to your question, Robert, if you were to apply the U1R15 regulations 50 feet into the R4, then you could use it as commercial parking or parking for the rest of the PUD. But that's not what you're asking for today. So my suggestion, and we can work on this offline, is that for the purposes of this, and it'd be good if you could answer the question, are you okay with the limit of your ask for this application being conditional use to allow educational facility in the R4? And then at the time that you're ready to do the expanded parking, then you'll be looking at a PUD and using that split lot provision in the LDR.
Well, a question with that ask is that when you mention educational facility in the R4, are you talking about the building or are you talking about that area? Because, the functions aren't going to really change. I mean, they use the site at the playground and the lawn area and everything for the children today, and that's not going to change. But that use, that educational facility use, is not limited to the building, is what I want to say. Like they teach outside, they teach in the playground. So,
right. Yeah. So I think that it'd be reasonable, and board, I'd like to get your feedback on this. If you allow educational facility as a conditional use in the R4, we're allowing it across the entire R4. It's not just, I suppose there's no reason not to, right? Board. You wouldn't be saying you can only have the conditional use in the building. You would be saying you can have the conditional use across the entire zoning district.
Board, any concerns about that?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Makes sense.
If I could just explain a little further, maybe it's already been clear, but in case it isn't, one of the things that I'm concerned about with the two different zone issue is that the different zones have different allowable uses slightly that cross, like, and we like to use our buildings, like it may be used for children during the day, but in the evening it's used for adults. And is that then, oh, this is childcare and this is educational and you can use it in this building and not that building? You see what I mean? And I think we'd like a harmonized use for the two buildings, just to help the way we function, since sometimes you have summer camps, sometimes you have adult classes, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's something that that was Paul's third point that I did want to talk about. The So we have a similar situation at the schoolhouse on Catkin Drive, and I don't know, Mark, if you were part of that decision, but they have sort of a split. They're in the SEQ, so it's super weird. But they're half and half preschool and or childcare facility and educational facility. And I know that the decision on that was a little bit convoluted because it's in a residential zoning district. I don't know, it's very complicated. I don't really know how to deal with that fluidity. Mark, do you have any feeling of that and how the board dealt with it? Or should I just kind of dig into those records?
I would probably dig into the records because I don't recall the discussions in detail.
People mute their phones. There's a lot of background noise. Go ahead, Mark. Thank you.
Sure. I was just going to say, I don't recall the specific discussion over, you know, the I guess mixed use usage in a residential district. It was more sort of that project I remember more like the details of the site plan discussion, not the logistics of the mechanics of the zoning district on that project.
Okay. That's a tough one. I guess I'd like at this juncture, Delilah, can you chime in a little bit about the legal difference between a childcare facility and an educational facility?
Not, I can get you the definition, but I'm not, yeah. The childcare facility with, 6 or more students is a certain definition under the state. In our regulations. Educational facility has the definition of
Educational facility, a facility used for or in support of education, instruction, or research in any branch of knowledge, including private and public elementary schools and secondary schools, colleges, and universities.
yes, that's it.
Childcare facility is a very, very long definition. And it says to provide care, protection, supervision, and education for children under the age of 16 outside of their homes for periods of fewer than 24 hours a day. And then it goes on and on. I mean, it seems like, I don't know, I'm not allowed to have opinions. My opinion is that it seems like a lot of bureaucracy to distinguish between the two, but I'd have to do some research onto what the regulatory parameters are. What is the board's general sense of the direction I should head with my research on this?
Thoughts from the board?
Like, should we try and find a way to keep them as 2 separate uses, or should we try and find a way to define them as one use?
Why wouldn't we try to define it as one use?
I don't know.
What's the downside of that?
Well, it's more like, it's not necessarily this scenario. It's more like, I know we don't really do precedent, but what is that? What if this were a different applicant and they had nefarious intent? What could go wrong? Is there anything that really could go south if, the Davises moved on and somebody came in that wasn't as willing to work with us, I guess, and took over the same property?
Board members' thoughts?
Well, Marla, with conditional use review, does the approval go to the site or the applicant?
The site.
Okay. So we want to provide control, not knowing what's down the line.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I can't think of a downside off the top of my head. I just want to make sure that there isn't one. And then I guess the other option is that, we spend a little more time researching this and have another conversation at a continued hearing.
Well, I think my thought is we want to avoid unintended consequences at any cost. So taking our time, there's going to be more hearings about this. My suggestion is, why don't we do that?
Mm.
And Paul, you're raising your hand?
Yes, one thing to help with that, I don't know if you got the new C1 existing conditions plan we sent today, Marla. And maybe you could pull that up. But we took a look at where the line was placed. Originally, we thought it was about 50 feet from the property line anyhow. And with the split lot zone extension, right, you can extend the use from one district to another only up to 50 feet.
Right.
So we took a look at that, and Marla's right. We did not locate the line right. It's actually further west. However, there's also an assessment on the property for C1 R15, and that assessment that's been paid on the taxes is 1.32 acres. So we actually did this line today. That's the old C1 plan that we sent, but we sent an update, I believe, this morning to show, based on the 1.32 acres that are paid for the commercial parcel, you can actually locate that line specifically. And with that said, when you extend that over 50 feet, it doesn't get to the property line, but it does encompass the entire carriage house building. So that is an option I'd like to throw out there that we should perhaps review, because that's real. That's what the Davises have been paying. Is it's a 1.62 acre lot. 1.32 acres is zoned commercial. The other balance is the R4. And so that line can be specifically placed knowing that.
Yeah, so our assessor does not govern where the zoning line is. If you've been assessed incorrectly, then that may be an issue and we can work on that. But the zoning district line is where the GIS map says the zoning district line is. And that you may be right, it may be at the edge of the carriage house, and you may be in the same situation, but I just want to make sure we're clear. It's not what the assessor says, it's what the GIS map says. Delilah, there's a second thing in supplemental. It's called the studio plan or something like that.
Not in the packet that I downloaded.
Oh,
There's only their photos, and that's the Davis
maybe
studio.
I didn't save it then. Maybe I exited out of it before I saved it.
Yeah,
I can
I only have
probably
the
get it
document
open.
with the photos as a supplemental item in that folder.
Okay, I can share my screen briefly. Let me
Okay,
see.
let me unshare.
Alrighty. Sorry about that, Paul. Just a little error. Okay. So you're showing it. Yeah, so I think this is consistent with what we saw actually. So this probably is right. So this line, well, I don't know how you do this. This is crazy. This line is what you're showing is the 50 foot, and then the property line is here. So yeah, that's pretty, I think that's consistent with our GIS. So that sounds like it's right. Yeah, so it leaves you this sliver that can't be C1R15.
Right. And what we did was, you can see on the left, we placed the GIS line, which is just in front of the carriage house. And that's the offset that you drew first in blue. But then we also did the calculation, which is the second. It's like the larger dash line that is in just into the carriage house a little bit. It's a few feet in. And then if you offset that, it doesn't get to the property line on the east, but it gets close. There's still 3 feet or so. But it would, that 50, the 50 feet extension of the C1R15 zoning uses can be used there. And that includes both educational facility as well as childcare. So that's the point we like to make, is that the commercial district allows the childcare. It's weird to me because you can have childcare in people's homes, but and maybe I guess in a residential district, it's basically not allowed, I guess, in the R4. But the big picture educational use is something that they're doing, and the preschool functions are preschool education. So.
Okay, so I think that the bottom line is that we have to review this a little more. I think we understand that your request is only at this time for the site, all the functions of the site to be allowed across the entire parcel.
Right.
Right now, you're not asking for any other provisions of the C1R15 to apply in the R4, like setbacks or heights or lot coverage or anything.
Correct.
You may ask that later, and not asking that now is fine. You can still ask it later.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we ready to move on? Staff
Thanks, Don.
comment. Staff
was tough.
recommend. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Don. That was a tough one.
Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe how the proposed educational facility use will differ from the current use to allow review of this criterion. The applicant should testify how the building and the area around the building will be used. What will be the hours of the use? What noise will be associated with the use? What landscaping buffer exists or is proposed? Staff considers the location of the educational facility within the side yard setback to be a potential factor in determining whether the impact is undue and adverse.
Okay, I'm happy to answer. This is Teresa Davis.
Sure.
So as far as the expansion of the current use to the carriage house, there will be no difference in any change other than the current program and activities that we already have going on in the main building. As far as how the area will be used, similarly, it will continue to be used as it has been. There will continue to be parking, lawn, landscaping, and play space used. Some things that we do plan to improve would be ADA accessibility with the parking in that area. So most of it will be maintained exactly as it is currently, such as the playground space. Our hours of use in general are occasionally as early as 8 and as late as 8 p.m. I do want to note that our pickup heavy time is between 1:30 and 3 o'clock. So it's very, our traffic is more minimal in those 4 to 6 hours, 4 to 6 p.m. The noise associated with the use would be the exact same as it is today, where children are playing in the playground or teachers are working with groups of kids outside. So no change would occur that's different from our current programming. And then the landscaping buffer is, there's already a quite heavily screened landscape buffer that exists, and that will be maintained. So no changes that would reduce the existing landscape buffer.
And I think we put some photos of the east buffer screening to just illustrate that. The file that was added today of east buffer screening, just to show that buffer that we were talking about. Yeah, there you go. That behind those buildings is the buffer screen. You can see it's quite robust.
What kind of traffic coming and going is what's the name of the pie place? Pie?
Oh, Pie Society. So they have off-site pickup, and then one night a week when we do not have after-school classes, they have on-site pickup that evening.
I see. So there's not traffic coming and going all the time picking up pies.
No, not at all. It's just one time a week for a limited period of time.
The way that it's like a CSA in a sense is people order order their pies each week, and then they pick them up either at a different site totally away from here in the north end, for example, or one night a week they pick it up here.
And we've coordinated that with a time when we don't have classes.
Oh, okay. Thank you for addressing that. Other questions from the board?
I have a question. It's more of just a curiosity question. On your site plan, behind the carriage house, between the carriage house and the A-frame that's being demolished, right on the property line, you have something labeled wooden platform, but this picture seems to depict it as like a little structure.
Yes. So that little structure had been a playhouse that we think was built, probably in the 40s. And so it had become dilapidated enough that we did have that structure removed. And then we just placed a flat wooden platform that the kids use as a stage. So in that location now, that small structure that you see, this was taken last summer, shortly before we had that removed.
Okay, so the plan is accurate that it's a wooden platform and this picture is out of date.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ready to move on? Okay, staff recommends the board direct the applicant to prepare an assessment of the trip generation of this site prior to the next application for the project and authorize technical review if the trip assessment is necessary. Of the trip assessment if necessary.
So we're happy to do this, and we're happy to provide, ITE trip generation data and a traffic memorandum to support the next preliminary and final application submission. I was just talking with the engineer who did the original one when we moved in about this. What I want to note is that, it's that peak hour evaluation for trip ends that is of concern between 4 and 6 p.m. And our greatest traffic, as Teresa mentioned, is really before that, 1:30
to about 3.
To about 3, with a lot less traffic occurring in the 4 to 6. And then I think we already talked about Pie Society. In other words, this is currently zoned, our current traffic allotment included for a cafe standard, which has a lot higher trip generation than what the Pie Society is generating now. And we're happy to work with staff on this to sort of figure out the best approach. Do we use it as a short order restaurant, which a bakery could fit under, or even possibly the food hub is possible. Although, I don't know, we'd have to explore the details of that. But the point is, when we look at our trip generation data, not only did the square footage associated with the restaurant decrease, which significantly, because there's no longer a dining room. So that right there decreases the traffic allotment, but then it changes categories, which I think is a lower category of use.
Yeah, I think that your point is completely valid because the point that we're making here is that it's complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
The staff comment is that it's complicated. Please put some effort into it. Because when we took a first pass at it, I said, gosh, we could look at this 7 different ways. It'd be great if they could make an argument in favor of the one that they think is most appropriate, because you're the ones that own the property. So you know what's going on.
We do, and we know pretty tightly exactly like when our customers come and go. So
I have that down to a science because I have I have parking spots, but a small spot. So I schedule everything accordingly to make sure.
So we'll see that at the next stage.
Thank you. Okay, the next comment. There appears to be a discrepancy between the civil and landscaping drawings as it pertains to proposed parking lot layout. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to clarify what is proposed and to further clarify the proposed use of the area indicated on the plans as, quote, gravel parking area, quote, end quote, which appears to be an abandoned driveway.
Right, this is Paul Bovair. Yeah, the gravel area we're talking about was a driveway serving the A-frame. And at this point in time, we're just planning to leave that in place. That's what that hatched area is, extending between the buildings to the north. Another discrepancy I did see is the area by the ramp, kind of. So if you go in front of the carriage house and go a little bit to the left, fortunately, we have a hatch layer that's kind of covering the information that is shown on Paul's plan. So yeah, the line striping, I think that's probably what staff is referring to. So it's, it's just not showing there. The striping's not showing.
So which is correct? The civil drawing or the landscape drawing?
The landscape drawing in that area has, yeah, the striping and the line work there showing through is correct.
Landscape.
Thank you, Paul.
Mhm.
Any other comments before we move on? Questions?
Oh, actually, I would add one more thing. I think the hatch shown on the landscape plan for seeding is something we're not showing. But again, it's really an overseed for the most part. There's some small limits of grading north of the carriage house, but generally that area is just shown as reseeding. It's not otherwise being changed.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the intent is that's overseeding too. We're not changing any grading or anything like that. So it's just to be adding, seeding, just to help make sure it's dense enough.
Okay, thank you.
I
So
have a
that-
quick question.
Sure.
So by keeping that gravel in place, is there going to be any sort of barrier to keep people from driving and parking in that area, as additional overflow and then kind of backing each other up, or so they can't exit?
We do have a curb plan for that edge. Again, shows better on a landscape plan, but so you would have to drive over the curb to get up on that.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board or staff?
I would just note, I guess, call to Paul Bover's attention, the comments of the stormwater section that you have more than half acre of impervious. So that gravel area may be your friend.
Oh,
Yeah, I think for what we're planning at the moment, the looks like there's an exemption in 1203. It's 1203B. Exemption if you're redeveloping or adding less than 5,000 square feet, which I think applies here because we're proposing 3,346 square feet of new and redeveloped surface, and actually a net reduction. So I think for this project as it stands now, I think we would fall within that. I mean, let me know if you disagree with that, but.
Yeah, I think you should probably coordinate with the stormwater section prior to your next application, just because that wasn't totally clear, and I'm happy to facilitate that.
Yep, no, I can call Dave.
Yeah, Dave's not reviewing this one. Emily is.
Okay, yep.
so that brings us to the end of staff comments. And I'm wondering, board members, does anyone, before we turn to any public members who want to comment, does anyone from the board have any questions at this point?
Yeah, Don, I have a question.
Sure, Mark, go ahead.
I guess it's kind of a question for Marla or Delilah. I know that this existing carriage house is pre-existing non-conforming because it's into the 10-foot setback. But the new addition, the dormer on the second floor, should that be outside of the 10-foot setback? Any new construction addition work typically, in my experience, needs to meet the setback that would step back.
Give us a minute to find it.
Mm-hmm. So if you slide over to the right now. And up.
There we go.
It says it's set back 8 inches, but the site plan, it looks like it's further back than that. And I'm just curious about that issue.
Who can respond to that?
So is that dormer shown on the civil drawing? Probably not.
No.
What would it be?
No. So you're
That's what I'm just saying.
floor space with that dormer to the carriage house structure?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
What's
your
the
question.
You're adding additional square footage to the building with the dormer.
It's more that it's light. It's adding light into the space.
Doesn't change the footprint of the building at all. It just adds light.
But
Right, and that's why it was a question.
the overall square footage of the building increases slightly with it.
Because of that entryway.
Right.
But that's not in the setback.
Correct.
No, I know. And that's why it was a question for staff, because like I said, the building itself is already into the setback. And in my professional experience, if you do any new construction, it needs to meet the setback.
Well, this is more your bailiwick than mine.
You do have to meet yeah. You're correct, Mark.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what that distance is because the site plan doesn't have
Looks like about 2.5 feet.
something like that.
And I'm not, if you have new structure into the setback, that would be an issue.
So you're saying the dormer would have to end before the setback? Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct.
Okay.
And I know we're not in a design review district here, but I would just say like, I'd prefer to see the shed dormer glazing sort of more be in line with the rest of the glazing, have some divided lights. Right now, it seems like it's all just single light, plate glass.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a comment, but it's because we're not in a design review district.
Any other questions or discussion before we ask for public comment? Yes, Paul.
Yeah, I had a question about photometric requirements. I don't think we have that requirement. We're not adding any parking lot lighting at this time or pole lighting to the site. We're going to maintain what's there. But there are 4 existing like little tiny wall pack lights that are on the carriage house that we would like to remove and then replace with downcast lighting that are just small little wall packs at these door locations. So I wouldn't think that requires photometric analysis, but it's a question that we have for the board.
So the application requirement is that they provide photometric drawings for any new lighting. The board has the authority to waive application requirements. I will take the board's position on this under advisement, and I would agree with Paul that it seems a little excessive.
You'd agree with Paul that what, Marla?
It seems excessive to require photometric drawings for a couple replacement wall packs.
I would agree.
Especially if he's replacing it with compliant downcast shielded lights.
Does anyone disagree with this position? Okay. Any
so
other?
Paul, you're just going to have to ask for a waiver of that application requirement when you submit your application. Okay. That's a waiver, but the board has already given you feedback that they're likely to be okay with it.
Mr. Davis, did you raise your hand?
I did. I wanted to bring up the issue of the section 1803, which addresses the loss of the residential units. And I guess there's a couple things I wanted to just discuss with this. And when we file our formal application, we're gonna think about this and decide whether we want to use, in other words, the requirement to replace the housing that's being lost. And so we're going to decide whether we want to use that 25% value determination or whether we want to replace these 2 units within a 2-year period. But before so I guess I had a couple of questions about that. One is, in reading this section, when I think it's on page 320 of the LDR, Going down to section H, it talks about the housing, the City of South Burlington Housing Authority. And I guess I just wondered, is there this? Because I wasn't able to find it in just searching. And does this entity exist, or is there another, as the statute or as the regulations read, is there another sort of bona fide qualified nonprofit organization that is approved by the city to administer that section?
That is a great question. We actually, Delilah, have we had any folks choose the buyout option yet? This is one of the newest things in the LDRs.
Not since I've been on board, and since this has come into the LDRs, most people do the build a replacement housing. And 2 experiences that I've had with it so far were built within the 2-year period.
Okay, so the answer is no, we don't have one yet because we haven't had to. But I think that will probably fall to the Affordable Housing Committee to get started when we need to.
So there's not an entity right now that has administered this.
Right.
Okay, and so there's no regulations or rules or anything that we could consult.
No, if you had specific questions about what's in the, I don't think that anything. I think that the LDRs are intended to stand alone. I don't think you should have to rely on other external things in order to execute it.
Okay, thank you. And then what I wanted to, if Delilah, if you could pull up those photos that you were scrolling in the very beginning when Teresa was talking of the A-frame, because of the 3 dwelling units, when we purchased the property, as Teresa said, we inherited these 3 apartments, and one of them was the A-frame. And about almost exactly a year ago, if you go to the very first one, Delilah, that shows you the building as it stands. And if you look at that pine tree in the front corner, and then you scroll down to the next one, you see what happened. And it really kind of crushed. You can look at the following buildings to get a sense of the scope of the damage. And my point is that it really, our insurance company declared it a total loss. And as we considered trying to, could we replace this? What do we want to do? Is it habitable? At that angle, when that tree came down, our construction guy was like, you would think that tree would have glanced off it, but it turns out that this old A-frame, which was built, decades ago as a playhouse, not really meant to be a permanent structure, that roof was so soft that it literally went into it. And then we realized that whole roof is moist and not in good shape. And furthermore, that it doesn't even have a slab under it. In other words, there's dirt under the wooden floor, which was creating that, which explained why we were having problems with pests and spiders and rodents and things. So I think it's, I wanted to show you these pictures. And if I spoke with Terry Francis about this, and actually Teresa even spoke with with a fire department official about whether they wanted to do a burn exercise here, and they were pretty excited about it. And Terry Francis said, I told him I was going to be talking to you guys because it came up whether he needs to actually certify this is uninhabitable. And I wanted to show the board the photos and, tell you about our insurance company and that, and ask if you would like us to go to the formal bit of having Terry Francis come out and, whatever, certify something, or whether you can accept, I think, what is fairly obvious from these documents.
Marla, what are your thoughts about that?
This is entirely up to you guys.
Okay. I'm no architect. Maybe Mark, you can weigh in on this, but I think given what you've said and given what it looks like, I'm willing to take your word that it's a total loss and uninhabitable. What think the rest of you?
I concur. The fact that it doesn't even have a slab underneath it, and the damage that was incurred on it, I don't see why we need to discuss it much further.
Thanks, Mark. Other board members? Opinion? No? Okay. Any other comments from the applicant or members of the applicant team?
I have one more.
Sure.
I think the project is going to be pretty straightforward when we prepare the next preliminary submission. And our concern is still timing. If it's going to be educational use and up and running by September, one of the thoughts we have, if staff feels that the application is very complete, we were curious about whether or not the board ever combines preliminary and final together, and if that's an option for us considering the school schedule in the fall.
We do, but I'll let Marla speak to that.
Combining preliminary and final is technically the option of the board. And Paul is like one of the best about reading the fine details of our regulations, which is probably why he's asking the question. I have to say, Paul, no one ever asks, they just do it.
Is that helpful?
I still don't know what to do. No one ever asked, but it's up to the board. So is the board, I guess I'm asking the board, would they be comfortable if we have a complete application for preliminary, that it's combined preliminary and final, an effort to have this up and running for September?
Members of the board, is anyone opposed to them combining preliminary and final plat?
Well, Marla, isn't it true that we typically say it's up to the applicant to submit because, they're kind of, they have to submit everything then. It's not an incremental submission. They've got to get all their I's dotted and all their T's crossed, and so they're spending all of their, soft costs ahead of time without, so we may have comments that make them have to go back and spend additional soft costs that would have been picked up during preliminary. So I thought we've always told the applicant it's sort of at their risk.
Yeah, it's technically the board's authority, but like I was saying, the applicant usually doesn't even bother to ask. They just go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that give you the information you're looking for?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board or applicant? Questions from the applicant before we move on? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this project?
I received a letter from Sarah Bretzman, who lives on Laurel Hill Drive.
Hi, I'm actually here.
Okay, then I won't read your comment.
Thanks. So I'm actually on Brewer Parkway, which is a property that borders the playground area for the most part.
Sarah, may I interrupt, please? Before we take your comments, and we look forward to hearing them. Does who else has comments tonight? Public comments. Ray, okay. Anyone else with public comments? It helps us to get a sense of how much time we have. So, okay, thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
So I think, we're probably going to be the most affected by some of the changes that would happen in the property. And so I did have some questions about the proposal. I guess one of them, I think I understood tonight, was that if it does become an educational facility, that it has a grace period of 2 years where it could change back into an apartment rental property. Is that correct? Am I correct on understanding that?
Marla, do you know the answer to that?
I was going to let Delilah respond.
Delilah?
Well, with the removal, if they remove housing, they have a 2-year period with which to replace the housing with housing of the same number of bedrooms or more. Or else they are subject to the paying into the Housing Preservation Trust Fund.
But that
Housing-
doesn't mean that they can just switch it back. It doesn't even require it to be on that property. It just means, so I guess the short answer is no, they couldn't just switch it back. The housing replacement is unrelated to the application for this parcel. It's more like you have to provide replacement housing or pay into the fund as sort of a separate project.
So paying into the fund, I guess that's something I don't really quite understand, but and then I guess my other question is the parking lot area that Paul, you brought up as being a potential place being right now is the children's playground that is enclosed. The projection is to create parking there eventually, which would be right up against the property, more parking.
Right. So
It sounded like that was a down
today.
But okay, but the approval of this would kind of begin that process of changing the okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also my concern was about the tree line that goes that separates the property. There's pretty, a pretty nice blockage between the properties, and it sounds like and maybe looks like those trees would be taken out with this plan. Is that correct?
It sounded like from what they said, they do not plan to impact trees.
Yeah, there's no
There are no plans to do that.
Paul, yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, there's no plans to take the buffer trees down at all.
Oh, great. That's excellent. Well, I'm excited about the potential for a new educational facility. And I look forward to hearing more about how it all develops. And I guess that my big concern was, the space right behind us that's between the neighborhood and the tree line. So if those two places were maintained, I was a little concerned about the second floor, the dormer, but it sounds like that's just an opening for light, which sounds great. So congratulations to Davis Studios. It sounds like an exciting project. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Mr. Gonda.
Yes, I happened to notice a series of plants, pollinator plants listed on one of the graphics. And I simply want to commend you folks for your choice of pollinator flowers. They're native and they're really excellent for wild insects. I
Thank
guess they're
you.
all wild, aren't they?
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Paul is helping us with that. Paul's helping us with that recommendation, and we definitely want to, have something that encourages insects and wildlife, to support what we can.
Mr. Gonda, do you have any other comments? No. Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, it looks like we can conclude the sketch plan review. Do we need a vote for, yes, Sarah, are you raising your hand? No, okay. Do we need to vote to conclude this, Marla?
No, not a sketch. You just need to conclude.
Okay.
And we'll work with the applicant on the question of educational use versus childcare facility.
Okay.
That cleared up before the next application.
So I guess that concludes the sketch plan review, and thank you applicant and team members for participating, and we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, board.
And now I'm going to hand it over to our acting chair, Brian Sullivan.
Hello. We are on to agenda item number 6, which is the continued preliminary plat application SD 2040 of O'Brien Eastview LLC, as described in agenda item number 6. I'm not going to read all of that. Located at 500 Farm Road. I understand that a board member has a disclosure on this.
Yeah, this is Stephanie. I have a conflict of interest with this project, so I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay. Do any other board members have disclosures?
I have a disclosure. I actually own a townhome in the hillside development owned by O'Brien. I've participated so far in all the hearings related to their expanded project. And I believe I can do so without bias. And if anyone has any concern about my ability to be objective, please speak now. Okay, I'll participate.
Good. Any other disclosures?
Can I just ask a procedural question before we start? Since the only thing after this is minutes and other business, do you want to cut Stephanie loose?
I don't see why not. That's traditionally what we do when someone's recused from the last agenda item.
Great, thank you. I will leave the meeting.
It's a courtesy that we extend, and it's been extended to me a lot, so I appreciate it.
I certainly appreciate it. So thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Okay, so back to housekeeping. I see that there are people here for the applicant. I recognize some of them. Are any of the people who are going to speak for the applicant speaking for the first time at this hearing, or were they all sworn in last time? Because if anybody
Welcome aboard.
and I got to do it now.
I believe I was sworn in previously.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think Scott Homestead from Krebs and Lansing also was.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anyone else who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant that has not been sworn in? Okay, good. So we have a memo, and Marla, you'll have to walk me through this. A memo kind of on the order of conducting the remaining review. That memo's got today's date on it. It refers to a number of items as SC. I assume those relate to staff comments. Is that what the FC is? I figured that out all by myself. Okay, so we've got those. I don't want to take the time, because it is creeping up on us. I don't want to take the time to read those all out loud. So I'll ask the applicant if you can take a look at that and let us know whether you have comments, questions, or any reaction at all to the text that comes after SC1 ray phasing.
So if it, we didn't actually spend a lot of time reviewing these comments because there were, I think, 40 or 50 staff comments in the first round that we had, I think gotten through 15 or 20 of, and then we had stopped. And so we were sort of hoping that we could review these comments and respond to them sort of in line with the next hearing, and maybe continue through the first round. At this point, we certainly can read these through with now and go over them, but like I think our would be to just respond to these in writing, in time for the April 15th hearing, which is also scheduled, or raise any questions at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that would be fine with me. Frankly, my preference is to have as much done offline as possible to conserve precious time. But I want to ask Marla, the first sentence of the third paragraph of that memo, are you saying that the two notes in red should be discussed now? Or are you saying that all of the SC comments should be discussed now?
My thought was that the two comments in red in the cover memo would be good to provide the applicant feedback on before they go and start making edits to their plan.
All right, so let's confine what we're doing now to the two comments in red, which are on page 2 of the memo. The first of which is recommending to the board to invite testimony from Bike and Ped. I think we have a representative here from the Bike and Ped Committee. And unless someone objects, I'm going to turn it over to that representative. Does anyone feel that we shouldn't do that?
Brian, I just have a quick question going back to what Andrew just said. Andrew, did you say the hearing on April 15th?
Potentially it's the different date than April 15th.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I think the point was that at the last hearing, we had discussed the shared use path. We promised to provide you guys with more information, specific proposal to address the sort of requests that we'd received, which we intend to provide here in the next week or so in time for that April hearing.
Oh, okay.
So just add that.
I have it as April 20th, but thank you.
Sure, that's likely the right date.
It's whatever the third Tuesday in April is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hear from, I think it's Catherine Frank from the Bike and Ped Committee.
Yes, that's me.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I have to do this. Anybody who's going to speak is technically offering testimony, so I do need to swear you in. So Catherine, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth as far as you know?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Well, I guess the only thing I want to say at this point is that the committee feels, well, let me start backwards a little bit here. With 155 new homes going in and other homes already built, this community is going to have a range of people, both older people, younger people, kids, families, whatever. And to facilitate their getting around in something other than a vehicle, you need to have, I think, the best, the most comfortable way for them to do that. And a bike path, a shared use path, is far more comfortable for people that are on bikes or whatever than a sidewalk, which usually just accommodates walkers. And far more, the shared use path is far safer and more comfortable than bike lanes for people. And I think this will be a major route going towards Heinsberg Road. There's more development at the bottom. So there'll be people going in both directions. So the committee, the Bike Ped Committee, feels strongly that the safest and most comfortable way to provide that is through a shared use path. But without hearing what you guys have to say in April, I can't, speak to any more specifics than that.
Okay, so question for the applicant. Are you prepared to respond to that tonight, or do you want to wait until the April 20th meeting?
I would say that we would like to respond to that at the April meeting. When we spoke with you guys at the last hearing, we presented the problem with the rec path on Old Farm Road intersecting with the existing homes, front yards, garages, removing parking spaces from existing residents on Old Farm Road, fences, and things like that. And I think that we all agreed that that sort of was problematic. And we've hired a professional consultant with VHB, and we're working with them on an alternative plan that we think will achieve all the goals here and keep everybody pleased, including the neighbors on Old Farm Road. So we hope to get you guys that in time for a conversation in April. Feel that it's best to sort of have all that new information at that point and discuss it then.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So does any board member have any comments on this particular item? None.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Would those proposed designs be available to us to look at before the hearing starts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the submission requirement is 2 weeks prior. So we'll, unless I'm wrong about that, it might even be 3 weeks prior, but we'll get it in by that deadline. So there should be a few weeks before the hearing is available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like we're set on that. Then the second comment in red, recommend the board revisit the question of what additional guest parking should be provided and direct the applicant to significantly increase on-street parking at this hearing. Marla, could you explain the context of this comment?
Yeah. Lila, can I share my screen?
Yeah, you should be able to, are you not?
Oh, can I just take right over? I thought you had to let go first. I guess you did not. Okay, great. So there had been some discussion about providing additional on-street parking along Old Farm Road. There's this lot of 18 open space. There are people who may or may not have enough space for visitors. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Project. And we had sort of tabled this discussion at the previous hearing because we were talking about the layout of the roadways. So I just wanted to revisit it and see if the board felt that there should be additional parallel parking along the project portion of Old Farm Road to accommodate visitors, because I think that information is going to be helpful for the applicant as they get ready for the next hearing.
Okay, so you're soliciting board comments. Do any board members have comments?
Yeah, Brian, I'll weigh in on this. You know, I think that, you know, we've heard testimony that, you know, the units with just having 2 parking spaces could potentially create some traffic issues. So, you know, I'd like to see a proposal with more on-street parking to allow for overflow parking to prevent sort of that congestion when people have visitors, you know, coming. I don't think I want it to be something where it becomes literally like just both sides of the street, you know, parking, and it becomes like an urban core. It has to be well thought out, it has to be landscaped, and it has to be logical. But I definitely think that we do need to see some more on-street parking. And it's up to the applicant to show how what they're providing achieves the desired need for, you know, visitor parking during sort of, I guess, peak times.
Thank you, Mark. Any other board members with comments? The negative motion. Yeah, I agree with you personally. I think it's good to have the overflow parking. On the other hand, I would not want to see Old Farm Road turned into something that had parking on both sides of the street. What does the applicant think at this point?
I think generally speaking, we're fine with taking another look at it. And I think, you know, the balance is key there. So, you know, we can go back to our designers and have them take another creative look at it and say, this is the direction that we've gotten. And I think, you know, we'll ask them to increase, but keep a nice balance there. So we're not creating more of an urban streetscape when it's really a neighborhood style street.
Yeah, just right now, it doesn't appear thought out. It appears plugged in. You know, it's sort of like they just kind of said, let's stick some on-street parking here in some places. You know, I think it needs to be believable.
Yeah, and I think that this is all sort of in context with the next submission where we have VHB taking a look at these streets and the bike lanes, et cetera. I think it's all kind of in context.
Good.
Okay, sounds good. Any other comments on that? Hearing none. So Marla, where did we leave off in the staff comments on the February 17th memo?
This is where I was super clever. The end of the memo is the end of what we got through. So that means if the memo ends on staff comment 15, which means we got through 15, so we should pick up at 16.
Okay. And again, I'm going to try and, this is an experiment. I'm going to try and hopefully save some time here. I'm not going to read out the comments. Applicant and anybody else who's interested has had time and can even read it now if they want. What does the applicant think about staff comment 16?
Sure. So I can hopefully address this. I think that you know, sort of timing in this process is always a little bit tricky. There's sort of a lot of moving parts. You know, we're kind of seeing here that we've got kind of multiple different mission timings. I would say that, you know, we could certainly prepare some road sections for the roads that are proposed for you guys and get those in. I would likely say that would be something we would do prior to the final hearing for the project, potentially not in time for the April hearing, just because we have kind of a lot of new stuff coming in for April. So I certainly think that getting the road sections done and in during the preliminary plat process makes sense. There was some talk in this, I believe it's in this comment, about roadway striping plans and signage plans, and our sort of preference would be to leave that for final. I don't know, you know, having a sort of understanding of signs and you know, road striping and turn lanes is sort of something that we think is necessary at this point in time. That would sort of be our proposal, if it works for you guys, to get the road sections in for the different roads proposed and to sort of table the striping and signage plans until final plat.
Okay, Marla and Delilah, what do you think?
I guess in terms of the striping, I think the point is to understand the use of the different portions of the paved lane. So if you can demonstrate that through a cross section that's more like a graphical cross section than an actual cross section, I don't think that the striping plan is necessary. But it's as it is, you're showing, you know, 28 feet of asphalt without any sense of what it's going to be used for. I think that's the purpose of this comment.
Sure, that makes sense. And as if we discuss those roads or get to them in conversation, certainly bring it up, because we don't want to build a road. I know that some of the roads maybe come with the sort of standards in the regulations and which are wider sometimes than you see built. So we're happy to have that conversation as we walk through the comments.
Okay, any board comments on item 16? No. Okay, any public comments on item 16? No. Okay, item 17. So this is a staff recommendation to the board. I think before hearing the board's response, I'd like to hear what the applicant thinks of staff's recommendation. I think, Andrew, if you're trying to speak, you're muted.
All right. So with regard to comment 17, I think that we have part of what we're going to be submitting in the next week or so is that we've been sort of listening to the feedback we're getting, and we have some plan changes that we're hoping to propose. And we found some ways to save on lot coverage. Part of the reason we were not including a road with a separate sidewalk was to try and reduce lot coverage in that area. And that in line with some of the modifications that we're doing, I think that we'll be able to make that roadway be the 20-foot wide road with a sidewalk and to find the coverage somewhere else. So I think we're on board with this, and we'll be presenting those at the next hearing as well. So in this packet that's forthcoming.
Good, good. Any board comments? No, any public comments? Okay, let's move on to 18. And this is staff recommending that we, the board, require the applicant to do something. What does the applicant think of the proposed requirement?
So I think that, just sort of backing up a little bit, there are a couple comments in here, and we had one noted in our slide deck that we had sent you guys today at slide 6. Is another comment I think sort of gets at sort of not knowing or not looking to approve the roadway for construction at this time, or not knowing the details of the roadway. At a high level, like I just think that that's an important conversation to have, because our aim here is to construct the roadways, and there are prescriptive requirements for roadways in the zoning regulations that we've used as a guide, and which are the guide for sort of when you don't know what the uses will be around. So I think that that's a larger question that is sort of informative to this specific comment, staff comment 18. We like the cul-de-sac road, which is the source of the comment. So if you go down 2 slides, I think we get to number 8. One more, so slide 9. This specific comment. So here you see the first sentence is that no concept of the commercial lots was provided. So we are working on a 2-dimensional concept of the commercial lots. We had provided you guys with a 3-dimensional rendering, like a photo rendering of a potential lot layout over there. We are going to get that to you guys. Propose this road with a cul-de-sac at the end. It sort of straddles 2 zoning districts. You go back 1 slide, you can see the different zoning district lines that we're dealing with. So you see the red line is the R1 land, and the purple line is the commercial 1 limited retail. And road sort of comes in, separates the 2 different zoning districts. We've made use of the uphill side of the road with 3-story townhomes, which are the same homes that we're building at Hillside currently, which are also the sort of bridge between the residential and multifamily areas. And on the side of the road, we've set up some development lots where the intent would be to have, larger multi-story, multifamily, mixed use style fronting on the new city street. The cul-de-sac is sort of viewed in our end as a feature. There are a number of environmental issues at the end of the road. So if you go back down to slide 9, you can see highlighted the sort of amalgamation of issues that you run into if you try to extend that road. You can see them highlighted in purple there. We're proposing a park at the end of the road. We're proposing 2 large playgrounds, a dog park that's fully fenced in. It's the trailhead for an exercise loop with different workout stations. And we sort of are considering this a destination. And we think the cul-de-sac's a nice feature. We had asked for a waiver actually to plant the interior of the cul-de-sac with trees or landscaping to sort of enhance it as a destination. Not sure if that's allowed under the rules or if it needs to be open for fire trucks or whatnot, but that's sort of how we've been viewing this road. And from a cross-section perspective, I think we're open to the board's feedback. We don't have a crystal ball as to exactly what the commercial development will be, but we're certainly open to putting, more or less parallel parking, or widening the road or narrowing it. I think that your guess is as good as ours to some extent, and there's plenty of room to sort of be what people think makes sense.
At the previous hearing in February, Andrew, you said that you were going to be able to provide a concept of how these lots would lay out. If you can do that, I think there's more room to, there's more backup for your proposed design. As long as you still can provide a concept of how these lots could lay out, we can review the road in conjunction with that concept.
Absolutely, yeah, that's part of what we hope to submit here, the early part of next week. So the 2D concept for this whole area and for the industrial commercial lots under the road reconfiguration designed to address the Tilly Avenue connection and some of the comments that are raised here tonight as well. So yeah, we'll definitely be getting you those, and that sounds great.
Like we're leaning toward consensus. Do any board members have comment on this? No? Any members of the public? No. Okay, so comment 19, Prairie gravel parking lot and extension of the walking path. What does the applicant think of those suggestions?
Yeah, so staff comment number one, I believe, in this report that we talked about last week related to phasing. And we have been working on a proposal of, sort of solidifying phasing and when we think things can be constructed and when they need to. And we'll be submitting that as part of the response to the criteria. So I think that, we're certainly open to access to this amenity, and we're open to a conversation about when to construct the park amenity. I think that it's sort of best viewed in the context of the overall phasing. So I'm not saying that it's, so I guess the answer is we're certainly open to this. We're not opposed to building a parking lot if we need to, but we sort of want to look at what's going to be built when and how different things are going to come online, and what triggers make sense to get this all. And we're going to do that holistically in this phasing overview.
That makes sense to me. What do Marla and Dylan think?
Good.
Good. Okay. Any board members have comments? Any members of the public? Okay. Comment 20. Shifting the east-west sidewalk on North 32. Okay, so let me ask, since this is a little abstract to just read on a sheet of paper, is there a plan or other illustration that we could look at so that we understand where these lots are?
Delilah, are you looking at the packet from February 27th? If I give you a packet document name and page number, would that work for you?
Sure, I can open that. Which one do you
So
want?
agenda 5E.
E?
Yep.
Right.
Page 8 is going to be sort of the overall plan and what we'll probably use.
Hold on a second.
Okay. Are you going to share the screen, Delilah?
I am when I get to the document. Give me a second.
Okay, great.
All right, so page 8. Where on it?
So I'll put a little dot and then you can erase it to this area. If you could zoom into there. So this comment is oh gosh, I have to flip back to it. Shift east-west sidewalk on lot 32 south to be along lot 32-33 property line. Design the homes to have the appearance of fronts on the sidewalk in order to have this be a community area rather than individual yards. So that would have this sidewalk coming up this way rather than where it is.
Okay. Andrew, what do you think?
I feel like I sound a little bit like a broken record, and I promise that I'm not just trying to make the April 15th hearing a total, or April 20th, sorry, Don, hearing a total nightmare for everybody. But a lot of what we've been doing since March when we met with you guys is trying to respond and come up with solutions for comments provided, of which this was one. And so we are looking at different options for the barn lot that might involve reducing some of the planned, structure. And so we're working through sort of what makes sense here, and we would have an alternate proposal for this lot to you guys to address this as well as other issues in the development plan, and sort of try and pull this whole thing together. So I would say we've heard the feedback, and we're looking at it, and we hope to get you more information and a different layout for this lot to review at the April hearing.
Okay. Anything more to be said, Marla?
No.
Any board members? Public? No. Okay. 21. What does the applicant have to say about comment 21?
So we had, if you went to our presentation to slide 13, there's a picture of the elevation that the comment pertains to in that packet. Comment 21 is relating to the garage side or the meadow loop side of the 3-unit townhomes proposed. I think we took a look at this. The way that the townhomes work, the way that we typically build them is that there are 3 different units. So you see the different unit names, TH22, 21, TH11. Each of those homes has 2 elevations that'll be constructed. So it's the exact same interior unit, but it's a different exterior treatment. And we do that so that the streetscape varies as you go up and down the road. So there'll be a TH22A and a TH22B, and the triplexes themselves will be sort of an amalgamation of the different elevations and units. So you might get a building that's a TH21 on the right, a TH21 on the left, and a TH11 in the middle. And they'll have the A elevation, and the right will have the B elevation, something like that. And on another building, you'll have TH21A on the right and an A on the left, and the TH1B in the middle. Basically, there are 6 different elevations that'll get sort of mixed and matched along the streetscape. And we're happy to include in those elevations the split garage doors as one of the suggestions. And we feel like, given the fact that there's about 6 different varied elevations and a number of different building configurations on top of that, that it'll result in a pretty nice and varied streetscape. So
I think it's also important to remember that this is the the loop side of that road as opposed to the main frontage or main elevation, which is fronting on Old Farm Road. So this is essentially kind of the back of house view, although what we try to do, and which I think we were successful at, is creating some interesting architecture, because this side of the home is also facing another home on the other side of the loop. But we chose the Old Farm Road side as kind of the primary frontage and elevation.
Yeah, and that's what this comment is trying to get at, is that acknowledging that this is the back, but that these homes should, if there's any little tweaks that can be made to make them play more nicely with the homes immediately across from them, creating like a feeling of a yard, it just, just be cautious of it being really a back of house feel.
Okay.
Yeah, we understand the sentiment of the city or the city staff, and again, we tried to make them attractive on that side. I think we were successful, but we also understand that maybe there's some improvements, and we think that breaking up the garage doors in certain instances would help, and maybe there's some other things we can look at.
I think there'll certainly be landscaping and things like that as well.
Okay. Mark, were you going to say something or?
Yeah, no, I was just I agree with Evan in terms of, I do think they have done a pretty good job in terms of an interesting architectural feel to these units. They definitely don't have your sort of prototypical triplex feel. They have good scale. I think, yes, splitting up the large garage doors in some instances is sort of desired. I don't think you want to split every one of them, because then you end up with the opposite effect of just lots of little garage doors running down the line. I think, sort of trying to mix it up a little bit so that that's another way of varying sort of the same floor plan, by having some be split and some be large, only increases the sort of the scale of it.
Yeah, we're fully on board with that, and we can, at the final plat, we'll have both elevations to provide to you guys, so you can see we'll just look at doing the variance of the units shown here as double, two single doors instead of a double, and then we'll be able to mix and match them on the different buildings.
We've also dictated and managed that on the existing hillside development too, to create architectural variety.
Okay. Any other board members want to weigh in? No? Anybody from the public? Comment 22. Let's hear from the applicant about comment 22.
I think we read this, and I gave you guys a screenshot of the cottage cluster. I think we're fully agreed that the landscaping and sort of common courtyard feel of the cottage court is sort of what makes it. We're fully on board with that. The landscaping plan will address, those plantings and things like that. And so, I think we agree. Particular cottage court, we had we're trying to look at doing something creative in this space. It didn't lay out perfectly. We have a lot of grade issues on this site. I don't know if I've said that a couple hundred times, but it's certainly not just a flat field where you can just drop anything in wherever you want. And so that kind of becomes problematic, but we're able to sort of get that central courtyard feel, and we feel good about it, and think that the homes and porches and things, sort of facing in on the sidewalk are going to have a really nice aesthetic. So, I think we're on board. The sidewalk question, I'm not sure that we 100% knew what the issue was. So they are connected to the sidewalk, but I guess maybe we could just get a little bit more detail on that. I mean, we felt like they're connected to the sidewalk, and folks who live there can pretty much walk wherever they want.
Yeah, so what you have up on the screen. Okay, I think that we sort of missed when we were reviewing this that there was a sidewalk perpendicular to Old Farm Road. However, the sidewalk that comes up from Hillside just kind of lands on nothing. So the comment was really about that sidewalk that comes up from Hillside. I'll draw on it here. Oh, that was terrible, fat fingers. Comes up around here, and then where do those people go? So is there a way to connect that? I think we had missed the central one when we looked at it. So either connect it to that or have a sidewalk
On the other side of the road. Could we make like a crossing point? I mean, at that corner?
Up to you guys. I mean, I think that we'd have to, you should propose something.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll probably look at trying to make a crossing point, just because we are sort of really tight on lot coverage. So, but yeah, we can look at that as part of the sort of, I guess that would be part of the road striping plans at that point, but you can certainly look at trying to create something there, maybe reorienting the driveway or something, and giving a little bit more space to make like a intentional area. I'll make a note for the landscaper.
Okay, Marla, are we good on that?
Yep.
Okay, any board comments? I noticed that Dawn has left the meeting, so we're at the bare minimum of board members to conduct business. So if anybody else has to leave, we'll have to wrap up the meeting. Comment 23. What does the applicant have in response to that?
Sure. So this was the draft elevation provided for one of the types proposed. This specific home type, I believe, would be located along the east side of Legacy Farm Road. It's more set back from the street than some of the other areas of the project. These are sort of larger lots and larger homes. You know, the two elevations we're proposing are shown here. In each elevation, it is correct that the garage is protruding slightly from the front porch. I think it's only a matter of a foot or 2 feet. You know, we had some challenges making the floor plans work and facilitating everything in the dimensions on the lots that we had. So, you know, I think you could view the staff comment in two ways. One way is to say it is true that this is the only home where the garage protrudes slightly from the front of the house, but it's also true that this is the only home out of dozens proposed where that is the case. And so, you know, we liked it. We tried to dress the garage up with some roof line changes, some different materials, shingle breaks, and, you know, some stonework on the Craftsman style.
And I think this kind of speaks to the point that Mark brought up earlier, where, you know, if you go too far in the other direction, you know, maybe you're actually reducing the architectural variety. And because the vast majority of the homes we're proposing don't bump out at all for the garage, we think that this is a pretty acceptable level. And in fact, it might actually add a little bit to the architectural design of the overall neighborhood. I mean, it would be a very, say that this is a snout home, which I think is, you know, what the regulations, especially in the Southeast quadrant, try to protect against. You know, this is not all garage with, you know, the main entryway tucked way behind. I think this has a pretty nice elevation, nice architectural feel to it, and it just happens to have a slight bump out for the garage.
How many of the 155 homes could be this unit?
I think it's like 17. So it's not many. I believe this is there. Is that right? I think there's 17 in these.
Andrew, it's 16.
16. So there's 16 homes total, or lots total, that could accept this home, and there are 4 different homes that are designed for those 16 lots. I think the chances are that this would be, you know, likely at most, you know, 5 to 8 homes.
So given that context, what's the board's feedback?
You know, it's hard to sort of envision it in 2D. I mean, I can because I'm an architect, but, you know, it does have a good breakup, you know. I'm just looking at the floor plan in the package for it, you know, and sort of trying to say, if I was tasked with how to, you know, make the garage not be proud of the house, you know, do you just go through the exercise of making the front porch deeper? I don't know if that sort of successfully solves your problem. You know, it's kind of like, you know, you're saying that it could be potentially up to 10% of the houses could be this sort of this layout, you know, be proud of the front of the house.
Well, those are the types of lots that this style of house could be on. But, you know, like on Hillside, we created a condition that we you know, pushed architectural variety, and we managed that process. So the intent would not to be to have this particular home on all of those lots. It's just available on those lots.
Right. It doesn't bother me so much because, typically when you say the garage proud of the front of the house, it was a response to not wanting to get a big white, envelope on the front of the house. And secondary is the actual functionality of the garage being front of the house as being a negative. Elevation-wise, architecturally speaking, these don't bother me because, they definitely have done a pretty good job of, breaking it up. They've, changed up the materials. They've put some roof line changes. They've, had one, a gable with tucked into over one of the garages. So it's not a deal breaker, especially since they aren't really in the southeast quadrant, so it's not part of the zoning regulations. I kind of I adhere to the regulations, when I'm reviewing a project. So I think they've done a pretty good job of meeting the regulations, even though, they don't need to meet that proud garage type of issue.
Yeah, I'd agree with Mark. I'd also defer to Mark because he's an architect and I'm not. Do any other board members want to chime in?
I like Mark's suggestion of pulling the porches out a little bit, if that's something you'd consider. I think it would be a nicer look. But overall, I really like the designs of these, if they're not going to sort of overwhelm the project.
Agreed.
You can take a look at the deck and certainly ask the architect if that's something that can work.
Yeah, even if you don't end up pulling the whole front porch, maybe what you do is you get like a bump out that gives you another gable on the front of the front porch that pops out a little bit, so that you're not having to change the whole roof line around the porch. You can bring out another element, which maybe brings it out a little bit past the front of the garage and changes the front line of the house.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds like the applicant has some good guidance. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this comment? Okay. Comment 24. Does the applicant have on that?
So this is about homes. Well, if you could switch to that page 8 again. This is about these homes on the bottom right. And I'm sure that Andrew has put some images in their packet, but I just wanted to give you the context. So those ones on the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, so the plan, I think, the homes that are provided in this location are the same homes being built currently in Hillside, which you can sort of see potentially if you scroll up a little on this page. I don't know if is that in this plan? Oh, it is. Yeah. So along O'Brien Farm Road that you can see right there, there are duplexes that lead the way over to the multifamily buildings that are being permitted. And this is the same unit type. It's a unit type that was designed for Hillside as a 3-story townhome. It was designed to be built into a really steep hillside, hence the name of the project. Cracking myself up over here. And, so it sort of was, option was a home that was sort of a 3-story walkout on the front, built into a hill, 2 stories at the back, with a yard at grade off the main living area. In the Hillside neighborhood, a very similar grading situation exists to what exists here in the Eastview neighborhood, in the location where these are again. And so the staff rightly points out that there's going to be a small backyard, and then behind the backyard, there's going to be a steep retaining wall, which is retaining the homes up above. That's the exact same, configuration that we have at Hillside, except that it's it's the city park that's up above and the walking trails and things. So in our packet we had sent you guys on page 17, we provided some elevation of the sort of streetscape at Hillside itself. Share those with you. I don't know if yeah, so here you can see what the homes look like. So that's just a snapshot of where they're proposed in the Eastview project. And you can see the renderings that we submitted with the Eastview project are the blue and the white smaller image. The larger image is actually an image of Hillside, of these homes, where they've been built in the sort of streetscape and street presence, which is pretty much would be, mirrored here in the Eastview project. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the way that the homes are built into the hill. You can see some of the challenges with the grade that these are dealing with. And you can also see the rock walls in the backyard and the small backyards created. See how it sort of retains the ground, and then how the walls retain the banks up above. So, we designed these units for this condition. We think that they have a great street presence. We think they have a great aesthetic appeal. They've been really well accepted by the market. Owners really like the stone wall in the back. Actually, a lot of people have really saw a run on these homes of people trying to get where the wall was tallest, because they love putting it back there. Kids climb up and down it, and people have planted flowers and things to grow on it. So we don't feel at all that the layout of these homes is challenging. We think that they'll be well received, just like the Hillside ones were.
We've also, the same is being proposed on this as that we did on Hillside, which is that we've tried to create architectural variety by not having them be symmetrical. So they kind of look like, actually, I remember 4.5 years ago, Andrew went on a vacation to, I think it was Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and looked at some of the older multifamily homes down there that kind of evolved over time. And so we actually provided some images to the architects and said we wanted to look more organic than just cookie cutter developments. And as a result, I think it breaks down the mass, but it also breaks down the streetscape as well by providing different forms.
Yeah, and you get that same amplification of the different unit types, because you're in a duplex format, and we've been able to we essentially have 2 different units and 4 different elevations, but then you can put each of those elevations together with a different elevation or a different unit, in pairing them in duplexes. So we haven't seen, of the long road at Hillside, there are not that repeat buildings that aren't mirrored or otherwise sort of differentiated. And that would be the intent here again.
Okay, Marla, do you feel that the applicant has sufficiently addressed your comment?
No, but this is a very subjective comment. In this slide and in the previous slide, my reaction is, wow, these homes are sterile. But that's subjective. If I walked my dog down this neighborhood every day, I don't know that I would ever meet the people who live in these homes because they don't have a outdoor space. And so that's kind of what we were feeling when we looked at these elevations. These homes don't have an interaction with the street, though they may be attractive. They're facing away from the neighborhood, or maybe they don't have a face at all because the back is a rock wall and the front is garages. Fortunately, this is one of the situations where I don't have a better suggestion, but also it's subjective. I want to know what the board thinks.
I think in regards to this is a big enough project that, we're going to get a wide variety of housing types, and they've certainly presented a wide variety of housing types. And, you know, not every one of the housing types is going to achieve it because it's going through such a wide, use the word wide variety, but a diverse topography and site that, you know, some of them are going to achieve some things and some of them aren't going to achieve some things. I think the applicant has, you know, some of it's going to be driven by market demand, and they have a proven market product for this type of area, and they have, you know, more prototypical single family for other areas, you know, the triplexes, the duplexes. It doesn't bother me as much just because of the fact that it'd be one thing if we were looking at a development of 15 houses and all of them were just this and that's all that they were doing.
That's kind of what they have, right? This is 14 houses in a row and no other
understand that.
houses on this street.
I totally get that. I'm talking about if this was the only development and that's all that was happening. We sort of, I see what you're saying, that it's sort of like a strip of houses. I guess I kind of look at it as it's a strip of houses that's sort of a response to the site. And they have tons of other varieties at other parts of the site. And again, that's a subjective comment on my part as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I feel about it is it wouldn't be my favorite, but I don't feel that I have the expertise. And I wonder if the board has the authority to impose our subjective preferences on the applicant in this case. So I would not favor taking any further action. Do any other board members want to weigh in? Yes, not. Okay, thanks, Jim. So I'm guessing not, unless there's a member of the public that wants to be heard. I think we've covered that comment. And hearing none, let's go on to comment 25.
We can just touch on the that we had included this just to say that, you know, we're happy to look at planting, you know, to planting a sort of dense buffer in the as recommended here by the Natural Resources Committee. That's the only reason this was included.
Okay, Marla, does that address your comment?
And that
I think, yeah, if they're willing to work with the committees, I think this comment can be looked at when they have proposed. I think we should table this comment until they've revised their plan.
We'll have Paul Simon help us pick out some pollinators.
Yeah, I think, you know, we obviously that area, so like if you're looking at our slide, you know, the next slide showed the sort of area being discussed. We had set that area aside in the interest of creating a corridor where wildlife would be able to still cross the site and get from point A to point B. We talked about that at the last hearing. You can see here, you know, I actually cut it off, but where it says connection corridor and there's an arrow in the middle, the big green planted bar in the middle of the page. You know, that was the intention, was to allow for a sort of way across the site. That was always the intention there. And there's plenty of room to plant all kinds of trees and pollinators and things in that area. And our landscape plans will allow for that. What I will say is that there also needs to be an accommodation for the recreational amenities that are planned in that area, the rec path, and the walking trail, loop thing. And so, you know, we would just coordinate, you know, having some dense plantings and areas you know, along the recommendations of the NR committee comments, with sort of balancing that with the needs of the walking path community, and that we think it can be really successful, and we're looking forward to presenting that. So
Okay, board members, any comments? Members of the public and especially, yes, Ray Gonda from the Natural Resources Committee.
Yes, I think we'd be very happy to work with the developers and making recommendations for how to deal with it. If they're willing to do that, and if it's legal for us to work with them.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
you're
see,
certainly encouraged to communicate with the applicant and some of these things before they move forward.
Yeah, we're happy to
Yeah.
accept your comments, Ray, and take them into consideration.
good.
I have a question. With the
Yes.
culvert under Kimball, that I guess you're saying would. So you're saying that this human rec path that's going right across the middle of the property, north to south, you're hoping will meet the needs of any wildlife that have historically used this. So, with the culverts that are still under the road, would any of this impact them? It just seems to me like the focus is mainly human recreation. And I guess I just want to assert that we've documented a lot of wildlife using this area. And we're just really concerned that that they're not being considered.
Okay.
I'm just going to interrupt for a
let's back
second.
up.
Drew is
hold
on the Natural Resources and Conservation Committee. I don't think the board knows Drew yet. So.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I was trying to establish, Marla, is what Drew's interest in this is. And when you
He
say,
signed in the chat.
okay. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, so sorry, Drew, Ray didn't introduce himself because we all kind of know Ray, but it's difficult for the board to read the chat.
I apologize for that. My name is Ray Gonda, and I'm the chair of the Natural Resources and Conservation Committee.
Okay, I see it in the chat. I see that Drew's name is in there.
Yeah, it's difficult for the board to read those things. So if you are speaking up on the behalf of the committee, just introduce yourself if we haven't met you before.
Yeah, I probably should have sworn both Ray and Drew in, but it's kind of beside the point now, so I'm not going to worry about it. Does the applicant continue to feel that they can work with the Natural Resources Committee on this?
Yeah, I think that we provided a rather large area here. I don't know what the scale of this plan is offhand. Scott might know, but that area is likely a couple 100 feet wide. And, the rec path is 8 feet wide. So I think there's plenty of room to accommodate, some sort of infrastructure or trees that can allow for the animals that are using the area to sort of have a place to hide, and then also getting the path through that's currently planned. So,
right. And I would just add, Andrew's right. This is a very wide swath, several hundred square feet. And I would just add, and to address the specific comment about the culvert drains a wetland that we are not touching at all. There's no wetland disturbance, and that wetland also has a 50-foot buffer around it on both sides. So you're talking just the wetland and wetland buffer alone, you're talking about a 130-foot swath through there.
so I think we definitely can accommodate the request of sort of trying to plant this densely and to allow for pollinator plants and things like that. And hopefully we can make it work in a way that everybody feels makes sense. I would say that would be specifically part of our planting plan, which is a requirement of the final plat. And so our intent would be to sort of work through that in our final plat process and leading up to filing those landscape plans.
Okay, any other comments? So we'll move on to 26, which raised the Rec and Parks Commission. Do we have a representative from that commission here tonight? Guess not. So Andrew, what do you think about 26?
Sure. So we had looked at 26. The comment specifically pertains to ownership and arrangements for the park space being contemplated in the project. I think we're certainly open to the discussion of public ownership of the green spaces. Our suggestion would probably be that those conversations would be best had in the context of an approved preliminary plat. Right now we're still sort of redesigning green spaces, and we're sort of trying to understand what the parameters of the projects are, where are the units, where are the roads, what sort of solidity are we getting with the plan, what roads are being allowed to be built or not. There are sort of a lot of open questions, and all of that is solidified in the preliminary plat process. Our intent would be to engage with the city, with the recreation folks, with any relevant committees, and to establish a proposal for all of these green spaces, considering all of the, the elements listed here, and to come up with a plan that we would present at final plat for approval. But it seems like it's quite an undertaking to produce that and to have that level of discussion about land that may or may not be permitted after, through the preliminary plat process. So it just felt like it would be best done in the security of that framework, knowing that the lines as they're drawn are relatively solid.
That makes sense to me. Marla, do you have any thoughts?
I'm just skimming through the Recreation and Parks Committee comments. Yeah, I guess there's really no reason it needs to be done before final.
Okay. Any board members want to chime in? No? Members of the public? Okay, then we're going to move on. Comment 27. Parking at the terminus of O'Brien Farm Road.
Sure. This is another one that I think we can table until we get our packet resubmitted. So, in response to this specific comment about parking, sorry, I'm still on number 27.
Yeah, we're on 27.
Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at the screens moving around. This particular comment was about the parking that was located in front of the barn and the pool amenity, and whether or not that constituted a public use under the regulations, and therefore the parking in the front yard would be allowed. We're trying to redesign that site, potentially remove that parking area. And so I think that it would be good to look at this in the context of that redesign. This might become irrelevant.
Okay, and when will the redesign be presented to us?
Hopefully, I've got to get some clarity from Marla on the deadline, but for the next hearing.
Okay. Okay, sounds reasonable. Any board comments on that? Public comments? Okay. 28th. So, Andrew, tell me.
Sorry, I'm used to you guys reading them out loud.
No, I'm getting away from that. It takes up too much time, and I don't have enough voice to get through all of that.
It's all good. So this comment in particular was about the height of, I think it touches on, I'm just going from memory here, but I think it touches on the single family homes and duplexes and triplexes proposed, and saying that, those all look good, and that the staff is fine with the height on those. And then it talks a little bit about the waivers that we did for the commercial retail subdivision. And, this is a really important part of the project for the applicant, for us. Those 10 or so lots that are created surrounding the reconfigured Old Farm Road, the new four-way intersection with Kimball Avenue, sort of intersecting with Hillside and the Phase 1 multifamily project. That area of the project is receiving density from the R1 areas that we weren't able to realize. It's sort of the planned commercial and residential hub for the entire development. And, the height limit in that area is challenging to achieve the densities and sort of vision of the project. And so our hope, and we're really sort of encouraged by this comment, is that we're going to be able to present a framework, give you guys information to sort of understand what our vision is for that area. And we're working on a plan that will sort of show required frontage percentages for buildings. It'll show setbacks, it'll show parking lines and things like that, that will sort of, without committing to what the specific building will be, hopefully provide enough information that a framework can get established that would allow for increased height at a future hearing if those parameters were met. And so that whole plan is going to be the next submission, and will be able to be commented on by staff and then by you guys at the next hearing, hopefully.
Okay, that sounds sensible to me. Any comments in response? Not hearing any, we're going to jump to 29. Applicant is okay with this condition. That's what I love to see. So do we need to talk about it?
No, we don't.
Okay, does anybody feel the need to talk about it? Good. Let's move on to 30.
So just before you get to, I think before you get to 30, so these are the waiver requests, specifically the section staff comments about waiver requests. So waiver requests 1 through 10, a slide for it, slide 27, for the comment on oh, did we skip 29? Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped 29.
Was your okay with the condition related to 28 or 29?
I think it was related to both, but yeah, so on lot 29, we're fine with that. I think we just would look for some guidance from staff, or if somebody just wants to show us where they'd like the easement, we're happy to put it on the plan. I'm not sure what is behind that lot that we're connecting to, but that's all fine, perfectly fine.
Yeah, so it's actually the opposite. The pedestrian easement exists today. So you should, since you're building, when you build out the lot, you should be building the pedestrian access.
Okay.
Something
Well, yeah.
that was dedicated to the city ages ago.
So again, I think maybe we would just need to know where that is and what it's accessing, and we can, basically the first 100 feet of the lot are steep slope, and then the back 300 feet all the way across are class 2 wetland and a floodplain. And so our understanding is, we can't really build much in there, but we could certainly facilitate access to that wetland edge wherever it was intended.
Okay, we'll work with you. There's a lot of parcels in the city, just for the board's background, that have sort of like a 10-foot strip along the edge of them that is a pedestrian easement. So the purpose of all those 10-foot strips is not to actually represent like a straight line pedestrian path along the edge of parcels throughout the city. It's something that we acquired at the time of subdivision to sort of symbolize that there should be pedestrian access somewhere across the lot. So this is one of those lots that has that placeholder linear easement. And so as that lot gets used, that pedestrian access should be accommodated.
I think we're fine with that. I guess we would just need to know where to put it, and then, obviously we'd have to be able to construct it under the rules that apply, which we wouldn't be able to get involved in anything in the wetland or the floodplain. But
Yeah, the wetlands program just released guidance on building trails, so that'd be a good thing for you guys to read. State Wetlands Program.
I mean, I mean, again, we're happy to see wherever the trail is meant to go, and you know, once we get that ironed out, let's figure out what we can come up with.
Okay, can that be handled between meetings? Offline?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Okay,
sure.
good. Good. So the next series of comments all relate to waiver requests. Does it make sense to have all the comments together, or should we do them separately?
Yeah, so there's a bunch that are not about waiver requests afterwards. Are you suggesting maybe do a little break to take public comment in general, and then if we still have the energy, go back to the
No,
waivers?
I was thinking, you know, if we're looking at comments 30 through 34.
Yeah, they're all pretty different.
Okay, so you think we should do them separately?
Yeah, but if we, I mean, just a time check, if there's going to be time for public or committee feedback, your point is well taken that this is a good break point to do that. And then we can go back to waiver requests if there's still time.
Okay, yeah, because we're going to conclude the meeting by 10, and the meeting includes us doing the minutes, and I think we're going to vote on the item we closed tonight. So at this point, do we have any public comments? And that can be from an individual member of the public. It can be from a representative of one of the commissions. Does anybody from the public wish to be heard at this point? Not hearing any. We ready for comment 30?
Let's get through as many as we can, right?
Yeah, okay. What do you think?
So just a quick one on the, let's actually.
Sorry. I just realized I should say something about committee comments. I did talk to Sandy Dooley, who's on the Affordable Housing Committee, and she was torn between whether to attend this or the Planning Commission. I said, we're probably not going to get to the affordable housing, but she does have comments that she'd like to make. So just if we happen to get that far, know that there's other comments coming.
Okay, we'll remember that. So let's stay on 30, and Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to clarify on the right before 30, waiver requests 1 through 10, Marla, or the board, like we had provided a chart. Essentially, there's 16 or 20 lots or something in the development, and we had provided a chart going through lot by lot with the side, rear, and front yard setbacks. It is complicated. It was tedious to create the chart. You know, we're certainly happy to give, you know, the board 4 numbers that are the setback waivers, you know, but just want to make sure we do what is necessary. I mean, I think the cleanest thing would be the chart, which looks at each development lot and then gives a lot by lot waiver for, you know, but if we were to just give you, you know, waivers that applied holistically to all the homes, essentially that's just going to be the smallest setback for front, rear, side. I mean, it might as well just say 5 feet throughout, because that would apply universally and be. So I guess it's just a matter of preference. What would, you know, our theory was you'd want to be more specific than not, but we can certainly just find the minimums and give you 4 numbers for that. You know,
Well,
alternatively, maybe we can just say that the setbacks shown on the plans are accepted and leave it at that.
So the big picture comment we had about waivers is that waivers shouldn't be a problem if everything else is satisfactory, right? If the plans look great, they're showing the requested waiver. And so it should be a foregone conclusion that the board will grant the waiver. So my position is that why not have a blanket waiver? Because you're proposing a specific development plan. And, you know, if it looks good, then you don't need a million details about why it looks good. I don't know.
Yeah.
What is, I mean, the board with experience with like other big projects like South Village or Cider Mill, we've never seen 16 different setback waiver requests.
Well, just some background. Waivers as such did not exist in Vermont zoning law until the legislature created them, I think about 15 or 20 years ago. Before that, you had to apply for a variance, and the Vermont Supreme Court read the variance statute to say it's basically impossible to get a variance. So with that catch-22, the legislature created waivers. You know, I don't remember exactly what they provided for in giving towns and cities the power to allow waivers. But I have to think that it's more than just, you know, we waive everything. So I think there has to be some analysis done before we grant waivers. Does that address your point, Marla?
Yeah, so the statute that pertains to waivers is actually in the statute that allows planned unit development, which planned unit developments allow the appropriate municipal panel to amend the regulation. So that's where the waiver thing is enabled.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I'm not suggesting that we just waive everything, but it feels like it's a lot of work for Delilah to, you know, check the table and then check every single building against 16 different things. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree that it's a lot of work. I mean, it's certainly a lot of work in administering the zoning permits from our side too. And so I think simplifying it makes sense. And maybe we can just put our heads together on what that looks like. But we did provide a chart. It's one of the exhibits that goes through lot by lot, every single waiver being requested, and sort of we gave some color in our narrative, which is unfortunately long. It's like a 50-page thing, but each waiver was discussed in detail as to why we felt it was appropriate to give you guys the information that you would need. But, you know, I think probably 90% of the waivers being requested in this project are internal. So it's a waiver for a structure to be close to a lot line that this project is creating. And so, you know, in that regard, I think there's not a lot. There are not a lot of instances where we're looking for waivers to a pre-existing lot line. And so
I guess I should just clarify that my statement about consolidating waivers is only applicable to waivers 1 through 10, which are specific setback waivers. You know, I wouldn't propose to consolidate screening requirements with setback waivers, but I would propose to consolidate setback waivers for the entire project.
Okay.
I think Andrew's point's a good one though, because I mean, you know, with a new project that's kind of being created out of whole cloth, you know, we, for instance, on the Hillside project, we go out of our way to communicate to potential buyers what's coming after them, because we don't want them to be shocked. And so it's different than building next to an existing structure and having a setback that's, you know, adjacent to an existing building or home.
So I guess maybe we can circle back on this and come up with a proposal that makes sense. Staff and us maybe can just talk through it and get you guys something that's a little more streamlined for the administration of the permits, but perhaps a little bit more detailed than, you know, just a blanket. So why don't we do that offline? We can keep
Okay.
cruising.
Sounds good to me. Any other board members want to be heard? Big nose, seeing big.
I found it. These are your. No, I'm just saying this was the laundry list, Andrew.
Yeah. So sort of.
Yeah, I just
potentially-
looked at this and I said 11 feet on this one and 10 feet on this one and 13 feet on that one. Like, really? This seems like an administrative nightmare. Also, you can't get a 1 foot front setback, but you know that.
Brian, I'll offer really quick comment on this. I totally get where Marla and Delilah are coming from. You know, in terms of not wanting to have to basically put together this super sophisticated chart and have to check every single thing and see 1 foot here, 2 foot there. You know, but at the same time, I don't want to give a blanket waiver and then we end up with a condition where they push the envelope on every single lot because we've given them blanket waivers for setback. I think, you know, as I'm not anticipating that because I think what I've seen from a planning standpoint, but, you know, I think the plan should speak for itself. And then while we grant an overall blanket waiver from a setback, you know, the plan should also dictate it.
That works for us.
That sounds good.
Well, what if, okay, I can talk to Andrew about this. I have an idea.
Yeah.
I'll write it down.
I'm comfortable as long as staff is comfortable with whatever is sort of figured out offline.
Me too. Anybody object to that? Good. Okay. Are we ready to move on to the next comment?
Yeah, we sort of already touched on this, and we appreciate the sort of opportunity to get you this framework, and we're going to get you the framework for the height waiver. I think it's a really interesting suggestion by staff here that we could look to sort of create a framework which, if satisfied, would result in the height waiver. And I think that's great. It gives everybody some sort of assurances, and we're hoping that we can be successful at it. So we'll see at the next hearing.
Okay, next comment. What does the applicant want us to hear?
So for some of these waivers, I think it goes to the point that I was making before, which is that within this PUD, we're sort of laying out expectations right now. And I think this particular regulation was waived in Hillside in phase 1. Essentially, what this is saying is that if we put a non-residential use within 50 feet of the boundary of a residential district, essentially, you know, many of the commercial and residential C1 LR lots in our project are abutting, they're all abutting the R1, right? The industrial commercial lots are abutting the R1. That programmatically, you'd then just have to have a 50 foot, 50 feet, you'd have to have a 65-foot buffer and 50 foot of dense, you know, planted evergreens. And I think what we're saying is if there are areas of the PUD where the board thinks it's appropriate to have heavy screening, let's address those now and approve now, and then let's not have this 65-foot automatic setback be something that we need to deal with in the future. The plan is here for the making right now. So, you know, we think that we've addressed sort of congruousness between the different areas, and we'd like to not have to sort this out or have a mandatory 65-foot setback be kicked in, because we're proposing something on a lot that we already had approved, in which we already discussed the screening between the R1 and that area, if that makes sense.
So this standard that you're asking for the waiver of, it says where a new non-residential use is adjacent to or within 50 feet of the boundary of a residential district. So you have, yes, Delilah, could you go back to that exhibit where we were looking at page 8 and flip to page.
If you go to the next slide, it has the overall plan with the zoning district.
I was looking for the zoning district one. Yeah, you have that?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, the roads count as part of that 50 feet. So if you're buffered by a 50-foot right of way, you're there already.
If you had our presentation.
Yeah, Delilah, Andrew was saying he had the page we were looking for in his presentation. Sorry, we kind of backtracked there.
There you go. So, I mean, my feeling is that the purple, where the purple and red lot is on the corner, I can't point to your screen, but where the residential one and purple lot are cross-pollinated, and then where the IC lots are abutting the already 200-foot buffer that we've put in with the wetland corridor and environmental corridor, there'd be a 5-foot buffer added onto that.
There wouldn't. If you've already got it, you've got it.
Well, if it's not on the lot though, right? The way the lots are drawn. I guess what I'm saying is if there are areas where we think that we should have a big buffer and plant trees, we'd just like to identify them now and then waive this provision for the future. That way there's certainty where the lot lines are, where the buffers are, where we need dense screening or planting. And then we can just have a plan that's sort of solidified, if that makes sense. But I personally am not seeing any area, where the industrial commercial land abuts the R1, we certainly are looking for that dense buffer, and we've provided it already in that wildlife corridor. And so I think, in that area, we've already got the screening, and in the area where the purple and red are meeting, our intent there is to have a community, to have, multifamily and commercial style buildings that all relate to each other, not have a hedgerow.
What does staff think about that?
Well, I think this is a situation where we need the board's feedback, but I'm happy to read out the applicable standard if the board is at all confused about the question.
Marla, could you repeat that? You were breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. So I think this is a situation where we need the board's feedback, but if the board's confused about what the question is, I'd be happy to read out the relevant standard.
Do we have any board feedback at the moment?
I'd like Marla to weigh in terms of giving us better direction because I'm a little confused right now.
Okay, so the standard says where a new non-residential use is adjacent to or within 50 feet of the boundary of a residential district. Skipping ahead, the required side or rear setback shall be increased to 65 feet. Within that 65 feet, 15 feet shall be densely landscaped. No light fixtures can be in that 15 feet. Or you can reduce it if adequate screening is provided. So basically, this is saying that the setback for the commercial lots would be greater than the standard setback where they abut the pink area in the plan that Delilah is showing now.
Okay.
They're asking for a waiver of that requirement.
How much of a waiver is being requested?
They're asking for it to be entirely waived so that the setbacks are just the standard setbacks in the commercial zoning districts. And Andrew is saying that they would like to, instead of have a larger setback, they would like to review it on a case-by-case basis and have the board say whether additional buffer or screening is needed.
My opinion on this is that there's a reason that this is a standard, and, asking to review it on a case-by-case basis, I'm not sure what the benefit of that is when the standard is written to create a distance and landscape buffer between residential and commercial.
Yeah, I think that what I was saying was that, we're creating, if you're looking at this plan, we're creating the purple lots that abut the red lots, and we're creating the green lots that abut the red lots. And our intent is to build the uses that are permitted on those lots. And I guess what I'm saying is, in the area where the green and the red are meeting, we've provided a couple 100-foot buffer. The buffer happens to be on the lots that are red. And if we came in to permit one of those green lots, we would have a 200-foot buffer on the red side and then a mandatory 65-foot buffer on the green side on top of that. So I think in that entire area, we've sort of already provided the buffer and would make sense for the waiver. And where the purple and red lots are meeting is meant to be, you know, a planned unit development. I mean, it's meant to be residential mixed use development that's integrated. And I just don't know where in that scenario it would be appropriate to have a 65-foot edged buffer. And so that's sort of why we were requesting the waiver. And my point was just that if we feel it's appropriate to add the buffer somewhere, that our preference would be to add it now, put it in the plan so that everybody knows that it's there, you know, and not have it be a surprise in the future.
And I think on the conversion from the R1 PRD to the C1 LR, where those 3-story townhomes, we are trying to create transition. And so we're, you know, shifting from the lower density, smaller homes to the larger or higher density, larger townhomes, then to the larger commercial buildings. And I think all we're asking is, you know, for the DRB to give itself some flexibility in terms of what is required for screening when we're doing some architectural transition work anyway.
So in the IC zone, what is considered sort of like the current setback without incorporating the 65-foot setback that has a differentiation between residential and commercial?
Good question.
Hold on a second. Yeah.
So it's 953. We've got,
IC setback is 30 feet, 30-foot front yard, 30-foot rear yard, 10-foot side yard.
Yep, correct.
Okay. And so they're basically asking for essentially halving of the whichever setback is going to be adjacent to the residential district. I mean, I see, like, right now I'm looking at Exhibit 6G, the master plan, which does show, like, you know, open space zone 3 is part of the red district, you know, on the plan. So they do have a built-in buffer. So in that circumstance, I'm kind of in agreement on that. But I'm looking at like the C1 LR zone, which is adjacent to the green residential zone 5, where you don't have that built-in buffer. You basically have O'Brien Farm Road East.
Yep.
So that's more of an area that I'm sort of more inclined to say I'm not as supportive of it. But I do see the IC zone as being one where it's kind of designed into it. And I would be more supportive of a waiver from the 65 to the 30 or whatever, you know, the district setback is. But again, this is something that goes to, you know, it's hard to respond to these without seeing like the test development, you know, even just the two-dimensional site plan, which I know it's kind of a catch-22. You want to know whether you can do 30 or 65 before you do a test case, but you know, I think we need to see it sort of proven to us.
Yep.
okay, so it's 9:55. I think we're going to have to stop here, and I think it's probably appropriate to stop because this is a more complicated discussion than I think we really have the bandwidth to resolve at this hour of the evening. So unless anybody objects, I would call for a motion to continue the hearing to April 20th.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we continue whatever this site plan, master plan number is to be the next hearing.
SD 2040.
Okay, that one.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim Langen,
Aye.
Alyssa Iring,
Aye.
Mark Bear,
Aye.
and acting chair votes aye. So with that, we will close the public part of our hearing tonight, and we'll continue on with just the board and the staff for the minutes and potentially to vote on the item that we closed earlier this evening. Thank you all for your participation, and for the team on the O'Brien project, we'll see you on April 20th.
Sounds good. Thank you all. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.